everybody. Welcome back to another fun episode of Be That Lawyer with Fretzin. We are here every single week, twice a week, to make sure you are continuing to be your best self as a lawyer, practicing all over the world. We've got people from Saudi Arabia listening, from England, Canada. I'm getting all types of great people from all over the place. So the podcast is a real thing, man. Do you do a podcast, Mark?
No, just as a guest. So whenever I get the chance.
You probably should. You have the personality for it. It's a lot of fun, and you get to meet just the most amazing people. And I think I initially started out a podcast because I thought it was going to be just how do I brand myself and get the word out. But that's actually been like not the least more important thing, but it's been kind of down on the list. It's really been like, how do I keep in touch with you? How do I keep in touch? How do I get to meet legal experts? How do I build out my network with just the best people in the world? And that's really been kind of my big takeaway from it. But I'm happy to have you back, Mark. It's been a while. We ran into each other. Both of our kids are doing School of Rock, which if nobody's heard about School of Rock before, it's like based on the movie, but with Jack Black. But you've been in it. Your son's been in it a while.
Yeah, he's been in it since December of last year. So I guess just a little over a year.
Okay, I think
And
a
he
little longer
loves
than
it.
mine.
Plays guitar and sings and is really into it. I think he was a little bummed that he didn't get to do the performance this summer, as I think it conflicted with every single baseball game that he had.
Yeah.
So it was, you got to pick at some point.
Yeah. But my son Andrew, like he's been playing guitar for a long time in the basement with a teacher, and it's been great. And there's been growth, but nowhere near the kind of growth that he's seen being in a band and like being forced to like learn songs and get on a stage and perform. And it's really been a game changer for him and his guitar. And I mean, that's what I think I mean, we could segue that to lawyers in the sense of, lawyers that are participating in peer advisory groups, lawyers that are hiring coaches, lawyers that find mentors and advisors and people to do stuff with tend to do better than ones that just go it alone.
Yeah, and Steve, you're being modest. Your kid lit up the stage, was absolutely the star of the show, is a fantastic advocate for all the little kids. It was pretty cool to see, and it was nice to see a leader on stage, and obviously
Wow.
gets that from somewhere, so it's good.
Well, yeah, he would never admit, by the way, that he got anything from me, right? Other than,
That's fair.
basic level genetics. But I appreciate you saying that. And I think he just kind of decided he was going to enjoy it and kind of make a thing about it. And if you look at the first performance and the second performance, very different type of, guitar style. But anyway, I was just so happy our kids got along, and I think he was talking about babysitting for your son, all that kind of stuff.
I
Anyway.
know, which is great. Anytime
Yeah.
when he's back. So
Awesome. Yeah, he's coming back soon. He's been away for a month now at a fishing lodge, and he's making buku dollars and having fun and getting to help people and fish and all kinds of stuff. So,
that's great.
Mark, you've been on the show before. For everyone listening, Mark Silverman's a partner of Lock Lord, and we have a quote for the show. This is as simple and straightforward a quote as we've ever had. It's "Get it done." So why, you could have thought up anything, but that one popped into your head. What is it about "Get it done"?
Yeah, so our clients come to us because of our ability to get things done efficiently. And it's critical. So with large real estate projects, it's if you are in default, it's not going to get any better. And so time absolutely kills deals. And so to the extent that we can't get it done quickly, oftentimes it gets stuck in the mud and your results are a lot worse.
Yeah.
So it's critical for me and for my team to understand that when those emails come in, when the other side is trying to delay things, sure, we can give a courtesy. Absolutely, we can be cordial, we can be courteous and anything like that. But we have to have that internal meter running inside that goes, we got to move this forward. This has to go.
Yeah.
And it's one of the guideposts of our practice. It's one of the guideposts of our team. It's really just focus on how can we get the best quality work out the door as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and my take is just a little different, obviously, with the business development slant that most lawyers are putting off business development. They're putting off social media. They're putting off things that aren't comfortable or that they just don't feel like they have time for. It's not a priority. How is that? How are you seeing that too? Or is that maybe just like you're either going to get it done or you're going to put it off? And what happens when we put it off? It's like that kind of idea.
Yeah, and really it views the same for my client development and marketing. I do it every single day, regardless of how busy I am with client work, regardless of whatever I'm doing. There's a portion of each day that I will spend reading through materials, making sure that I am on top of the market and that I've reached out to at least a couple of people, whether it's an email, a phone call, a text message, LinkedIn posts just to stay relevant. And
Yeah.
so I think those are important ways to continue to supplement. Even if you're screaming busy and you're billing 12, 14 hours a day, it's still important to take an extra 30 minutes and post something relevant on LinkedIn, or to send a quick email to a client that you haven't talked to in a while, or even to a client that you have talked to in a while, but you saw an article that made you think of them for whatever reason. Because those are the touch points, those are the pieces of this puzzle that I think get lost, and they mean a lot when they connect.
Yeah. So Mark, do me a solid and give a little background, because you're one of the top rainmakers I know in the Chicagoland area, and you've been on the show before. We talked about that, and I know I've got a number of questions I want to ask you today that are going to ferret out some of your best practices. But give us that Reader's Digest.
Sure. So started my career at Chapman and Cutler, really enjoyed my time there, was in their bankruptcy restructuring group doing primarily what I'm doing now, which is working out large commercial loans in various states of foreclosure, receivership, bankruptcy, and otherwise. I then moved to a few other firms. Most recently, I was at Dykema and I ran their financial services practice and CMBS Special Servicer Group, and then moved my practice over to Lock Lord about 18 months ago. So I run the commercial mortgage-backed securities special servicer practice group at Lock Lord. And all that means is basically a fancy creditors' rights group that focuses on special servicers. The special servicing world is very different than traditional banking. So when you think of a traditional bank loan that might go into default, it gets transferred to a workout group, a managed assets group, a special assets group, whatever it might be, within the same organization. And that workout banker then deals with the defaulted credit and finds a way to manage the process. In a securitized product, you obviously don't have a relationship person, and there's no special assets group, managed asset group within a trust. It's a real estate mortgage investment conduit trust, so there's really not a group within that that can manage the loans. And so when the loan triggers into default, it gets transferred to the special servicer. The special servicers are typically our clients, and they are equivalent to, similar to, a workout group. But I do think that they're slightly different in a lot of different ways, but one of which is that they're incredibly creative. And so they're very good at kind of creatively thinking through, how can we manage this credit in a manner that's not going to just go after the bad guy and try to get as much money as we can, although that's part of it. But it's really to get a more holistic understanding of what's best for the building, what's best for the bondholders and all parties in interest. And I think they're incredibly good at that. And so that's something where I've been fortunate enough to focus on since I was a baby lawyer, and have continued to do it ever since.
Yeah. And what sort of like moment, year, whatever, did you have where you sort of figured out that being a great lawyer was important and being specialized is important, but also that client development was something you needed to invest time on?
My first year, it was
Okay.
very clear to me that coming out of school in the last recession, that absent having client relationships yourself, you were just going to be a journeyman and just continue to kind of piece together work where you can get it.
Yeah.
And that was never really something that I was okay with. So I was a very young lawyer and was able to generate small amounts of work, but work nevertheless. And that was something that I prided myself on, and something that I was pleased that I was able to do. And the best way to do it is really to go back through your contacts, your network, your friends, and
Yeah.
folks that will trust and rely upon you to solve their problems. And sure, is there an element of luck that goes into some of this? Maybe, but I do think that you put yourself in the situations to create that luck and to create those opportunities. And you have to be willing to make the ask, and you have to be willing to say, look, I know you do X, Y, and Z. We do that too, and we do it really well. Let's sit down and talk about your situation. And so those are instances where, sure, you might be lucky to be in that scenario, but you have to actually close in order to make it work.
Yeah. And I think a lot what lawyers may not realize, and what I spend every day, all day on, is helping lawyers come up with and have those conversations in a sales-free manner. So what
Yeah.
questions are you asking? How are you building that relationship? How are you opening it up so that you don't have to, there's no aggression, right? And I'm sure you're not using anything like that, but how are you having that conversation to get to the point where they say, yeah, it sounds like we might be a better fit than even who we're working with now. Maybe we should try out a small matter, test it out, or what would it take for us to move over to you? And getting to the point where that conversation can happen, that's a process. There's some luck involved potentially, but more I see it as having a good methodology of how you enter into that and facilitate that conversation.
To me, it's education through storytelling. And so as
Okay.
lawyers, I think a lot of our job is being able to tell a story. And so for me, I've been very fortunate that I've had a lot of experience dealing with a lot of really interesting and really messed up situations. The deals that we handle are incredibly messy. There's a lot of very angry people that are really trying to hold on to their assets, to their property. And so that can breed really interesting stories, which make for good fodder for a conversation.
Yeah.
Where your story then converts to something that's more actionable is really to focus on timelines and timeframes. Because time to resolution, back to get it done, time to resolution is really important. So if you get a file, the time to resolve that file, much like it is for judges, is important. And so it's critical to focus not only on what the arc of your case is going to look like, but what the speed in which you can get there may be.
Yeah.
And so what I will do is I will often lead with stories that highlight or illustrate experiences that I've had in the not too distant past where we've been able to succeed along the lines of whatever cases that individual might be touching, where we were able to do it in an incredibly efficient manner. And we don't
Yeah.
talk about efficiency in the manner of like pricing or things like that. I think that's gauche. We don't really talk about any of that stuff. But for us, it's really just to illustrate if the typical process takes 12 months, here's a couple of times that we were able to do it in 6. Here's a couple times that we were able to do it in 9. And why did we do it in those timeframes as opposed to the typical 12 plus cycle? And
Yeah.
then explain that while we had these experiences, we also have a dozen more that took 4 years. And so it's really being honest, being humble, being appreciative of their time, and explaining through my past experiences that really seems to connect with folks.
Yeah. Well, they need to believe that you're an expert. They need to believe that you're the one that's going to resolve something faster, better, stronger than someone else to want to then move you forward. I think though many lawyers struggle with how to get those meetings. Somebody's working with another general counsel. A general counsel is working with another law firm. Okay, they're they've been with them for 5 years. And how does a lawyer get that meeting with a general counsel or with someone that has been working with another firm, another group for a period of time? What's your kind of secret sauce?
I wish I could tell you. I don't. I think it's really just doing good work and making sure that your reputation continues to be strong,
Okay.
regardless of if it's going to benefit you down the road.
Okay.
So I think that folks that come at this with a transactional mentality where it's like, I'm going to be nice to you, I'm going to do good things for you, and then you'll do good things for me, that doesn't really work. For me, it's just being genuine. And it's
Okay.
something that I think really came to fruition more clearly during the pandemic when I think folks became more real with one another. And as opposed to saying like, I'm so sorry for the, background noise and then putting yourself on mute and saying, kids, be quiet. This is embarrassing. Like nobody cares. And so it's like, hey, look, you're calling me after hours. My kids are with me. I'm just going to talk to you. We're going to solve your problem. I'm available for you. But understand that I'm a full person and that there's not going to be this massive bifurcation between this persona that you've put forward in the office versus the persona that you are in real life. And I
Yeah.
think that that authenticity and that genuineness matters. And it's something that to me is easy because I genuinely do care and I do want to be authentic and I do want to create relationships and I do like my clients. They're great people. They have interesting lives. They do interesting things. They often will teach me stuff about areas that I don't really have a lot of exposure into. But back to your kind of central question, I can recall a couple of times where I've had general counsels of company A say, hey, company B, we work with Mark for this type of case. You should reach out to him. He's got a team that spans the country. They might be able to help you on, why.
Yeah.
And those are more few and far between. And when they happen, it's great. And
Yeah.
it's a very humbling experience. But I do think that it's the kind of the constant care of just making sure that the people that you're working with, the people that you're interacting with at networking events, they like spending time with you and that
Yeah.
you like spending time with them. And I think that leads to good outcomes.
Yeah. I mean, something that I'm teaching on a regular basis, when someone is your client, thinks you're the greatest thing since sliced bread, you've saved the day, all of that, and you've become, friends. So it's like we have to start at that level that you could say to them, look, I'm in charge of this group. We have a lot of lawyers we need to feed. You love our work. I'm assuming that there's a number of people that in a similar space that I could be talking to, working with. I don't want to overstep any boundaries, but would you be open to talking that out and having a conversation about people we can help in a similar fashion, how we work with you? We have the capacity. It's not going to affect our, our work with you in the least. And see what that friend, that GC, that person's going to say, how they're going to respond, and understand it's like a great brain surgeon that's a best kept secret. And so we sometimes need to be a little bit more forward with the people we have benefited. And I can say that to my clients, like, hey, you've double, tripled your book of business. There's other lawyers, I would love the opportunity to talk with one or two just to see if I can help them in a similar fashion. I think everybody wins in that scenario when that trust is transferred, to transferal of trust,
Yeah.
right? So that's
I
a
think
more proactive approach, but I think that's one, waiting for it to happen versus making it happen. I like to make it happen.
I'm with you, and in most circumstances, I think that makes sense. Our servicer clients are not necessarily in the realm of kind of passing lawyers back and forth. I think
Right.
we're very fortunate that there's not a lot of people that do what I do. And so we're friends and we know all of our friendly competitors. I don't even know that they're competition. All
Yeah.
of us kind of have markets, all of us have different expertise. And sure, there's crossover and overlap by and among each of us. But I do think that there's it's a very strong group of people, really strong lawyers, and I don't have much negative to say. So for example, like we have a very good relationship with some attorneys in Manhattan, and we try not to step on toes there, and they're excellent and they do great work. And I don't think that I can do anything different or better than they can. We can maybe do the same, but I certainly wouldn't say that we could do anything better. In the Illinois market and Chicago in general, I do think that we can offer something slightly different than our peer firms, but I don't think that it's better. I just think it's something slightly different and that we come at things from a slightly different way. And so coming at and being honest and saying, like, look, we know our value, we know what we can add here, we know what we can add here. You may not want to use us here. And
Yeah.
so those are kind of conversations that you have to be very forthright with your clients.
Yeah.
But as far as having one of my servicers call another servicer and say, like, hey, we like Mark in this, I don't know that that's ever happened. Maybe at a networking event where it's I've been talking to servicer A and they've said, hey, we work with Mark, and there's just a little bit of osmosis there, but really I don't see that happening as much.
Yeah. And again, everybody's got a different situation with who they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. But Matt Campasso was he's a general counsel. He was on my show, I don't know, 10 episodes ago, and he was explaining as a GC, he's open to taking meetings, with new lawyers and new law firms if the introduction is done properly, if it's something valuable to him, even if they can't do business today. The idea that he's meeting with good resources that people are highly recommending. And so that's really what it's about. It's not every situation's the same, right, Mark? But that's the idea, is that we don't, you said this at the very beginning, you have to be proactive. You have to make the ask. And that ask might be
Right.
just getting a meeting with someone that has no interest in your services, but after they meet you, they might say, you know what, someone else may need you. And here, let me make I can't use you, but let me introduce you over here. And just never know where things can go.
And I call that kind of networking glue. And
Oh,
so it's
okay.
the kind of conduits that really are out there and in the marketplace. And so for us, that tends to be other vendors, other service providers, so receivers, brokers, things of that nature that are taking a lot of meetings, really sales meetings with a lot of our clients. And it's nice when Chicago comes up or when Texas or some other, California comes up, like, oh yeah, we've had good experience with Mark and his team in this jurisdiction. Those are meetings that I don't have the time to take, and where a lot of our networking glue friends and relationships can really come in handy. And it's even just saying your name in polite circles has value.
Yeah.
Another big part of this is making sure that you're out there and seen as a thought leader in the space. I think thought leader is often overblown as far as if that's concerned, but you have to know the industry, you have to know the area in which you practice.
Yeah.
I'm not just a general litigator that can handle kind of any litigation that comes my way. It really should and does touch on real estate in some form or fashion. And so whether that's, distressed real estate's my preference, but if it's got a real estate bend, it's probably in my orbit and something that we can help out on. If it's an employment claim, I've got great employment lawyers and I would be happy to introduce you, but it's certainly not something that I would tell you that I could handle. And so I
Right.
think it's being, again, intellectually honest with your service offerings and what you're able to do. Because the worst thing you can do and what will tank your relationship and career quickly is to sell something that you have no business doing. And so it's and again, knowing where the tip of your skis are so that you don't get out in front of them.
Yeah.
So for me, it's bringing in, I have an unbelievable team. We have unbelievable lawyers in a variety of different markets. They know their craft as well or better than anyone. And my ability to tap into those folks to say, we need this experience, we need a dirt lawyer in this region. And so just a traditional real estate lawyer, and finding that right person, that's my job. That's my, what
Yeah.
the service that I provide to my clients is that if it's something that I can't handle myself, I want to make sure that somebody is on my team that's going to be able to handle that quickly and efficiently for our guys. And
Well, and
so
we
it's
think, and
it's
we,
really important.
but let's take that a step further, Mark, because cross marketing for many attorneys, especially at your size firm and in the mid market, you have to know your partners. You have to know who's great at what. You have to know who's got great customer service, client service, whatever it might be. Because if you bring in work and you hand it off to the wrong person in the wrong state and wrong city and wrong person, like that relationship can get tarnished. So I think it's just as important to know the players internally and know who to go to. It also then keeps it top of mind of what you can bring in. And so talk about that a little bit, because I think those, if we're talking about just bringing in what you do, that's fine. But there's sort of a limit to how much a lawyer can make and do and work versus bringing in a lot of things that can then be fed off to the other attorneys where you get some credit or all the credit.
Yeah, and look, I mean, for me, it's not necessarily building credit. It's not necessarily building this kind of this facade, but it's really just solving problems. And so it's getting to the solution quickly. And if that means I need a tax lawyer for 20 hours, I'm going to find the best tax lawyer that I can find in my platform. We're going to use them for 20 hours, and that's going to be the conclusion of their service on the file. We don't overstaff our cases, so we're not going to have 5 lawyers sitting on a file when 2 will do.
Yeah.
But we might have a month where we do have 5 billers on it, but each of those billers does something different. So I might have an employment lawyer sit in because we have a union issue. I might have a tax lawyer come in because we have a tax issue. I'll have a real estate lawyer because we're finishing a deed in lieu of foreclosure. And so you'll see, the client will see 5 different billers, but they're not 5 different people like me, litigation, bankruptcy people. They're 5 different specialists that come in to solve a very small part of a very big problem. And we'll then use those people again if we need to in order to conclude the case.
Yeah.
And so the best examples I can give of that are kind of multi-state distressed portfolios where you're dealing with a lot of different states, a lot of different state law, where you might have one action rule issues, meaning that you can't sue on another piece of debt until you conclude the other piece. There's a lot of very complicated intersections of all of these various states. And so having folks that specialize in these areas work on the file, even for a limited amount of time, adds a huge amount of value to a client. And so when you kind of look at the outside counsel guidelines and it's like one associate and one partner, that's great. If you're handling a single state commercial foreclosure, one associate, one partner, I don't have any issue with that. I think that makes sense. But
Yeah.
when you start to deal in the complexities that we're dealing with, the one associate, one partner leading the file makes sense, but you're going to need an entire team of folks to get the results the client wants. And it's often challenging to explain that, but I think that the art of continuing to develop work and continue to get new work from existing clients is showing that these are necessary pieces of the overall puzzle to get you to the results that you desire from the outset. And so that's often just quick recovery of the asset or collection on a guarantee.
Yeah, but when you talk about great client service and you talk about just doing the right thing for the client, asking questions to identify other potential risks that they have, other areas that you're currently not engaged in, but you have the ability to engage in. I think that's sort of like it has to be done. And I don't know that it's being done enough. I
Absolutely.
think people sometimes, they've got a horse with blinders on and they're just seeing, I have a hammer and all I see is nails. Like they don't realize like, hey, what questions can I ask this client that don't relate to what we're doing together, but might ultimately open up the client to preventing bad things that could happen on employment, that could have bad things that could happen in real estate, bad things that could happen because maybe they're not being represented or being represented well or buy the right platform. So there's a lot of, a little bit of it is feeling around, but I think just asking the questions and getting the client to share what's really going on behind the curtain could open up a whole new world.
Oh, absolutely. And it's really, again, it's doing good work for good people, and it has its value, but you have to ask the questions. And so you have to get a holistic understanding of what your clients do, not only their day-to-day business, but what their colleagues are doing. And so if you've got an organization that's got 1,000 people and you work with 5 of them, it's probably a good idea to figure out what the other people do. So and maybe you can make assumptions on that, but I don't like to assume. I'd rather just ask.
Yeah.
Say, I know that you've got this huge organization, that you have this huge office space in XY. What do all these other people do? And I'll ask it as blunt as that. It's what does everyone
Yeah.
else do in
What's going
here?
on here?
I have no clue. This is so far over my head. I have no idea. And
Yeah.
you'll be surprised at what you learn. And so I'm always incredibly surprised at the creativity of a lot of my clients, where it's like, holy cow, I would have never thought to do that, but it makes perfect sense based on your primary business. And so I think those are conversations where I have that light bulb click on, where I'm like, man, I wish I would have thought of something like that. It's brilliant. That's a great way to utilize resources and pivot off of the same general business plan.
Yeah.
And so I think those are cool conversations, but you have to have them. You have to be willing to sound like you don't know everything. And I think that's something that lawyers don't necessarily do well, is to not have all of the answers. And for me, I don't need to have all the answers, but I want to ask all the questions so that I can then go back, work with my team that's incredibly talented, and get
Yeah.
the answer. And then I can report it back to you. But I don't want to pretend to have all those answers right off the bat.
Yeah. Right on the money. Right on the money. So Mark, if you had to give, kind of wrapping things up a little bit, it's almost been a half an hour, if you can believe it.
Well,
What's one piece of advice you'd give to solo, big firm, mid-market attorneys that are looking to grow their law practice and stay consistent over their career, like you've done?
keep consistent. So keep whatever it is that you're doing, if it's working or starting to work, keep doing it.
Yeah.
And so don't allow yourself to kind of get too busy to stop focusing on what you need to do to run your business. While it's critical to keep your clients top of mind, you're also running a business. And so it's important to just keep that forward momentum, but stay positive. And I think that it's really easy to kind of get down in the dumps. It's easy to kind of be like, man, haven't gotten a lot of success on X, Y, and Z. But if you can try to stay in a positive headspace, you're going to see a lot more things that can come to you, as opposed to just kind of focusing on the failures. So,
Yeah.
and little wins turn to big wins very quickly. And so
Yeah.
if you're able to get enough of these kind of incremental small wins, they turn into much bigger wins down the road. And it takes time, but it's doable. And it's that consistent approach, and consistently being there, being available, being hungry. I think those are things that I would try to impart on others.
Yeah. Really great stuff. And we love to do our game-changing podcast, game-changing book. I just want to share, if you're okay with it, Mark, I'll take your spot for the episode. My book, Sales Free Selling, which has been out for probably 10 years, is finally available on audio. So if you're interested in buying it, great. If you want to just listen to it on audio, go to Amazon, type in Sales Free Selling or type in Fretzin, check it out. It's a really fast read or listen. And what it's going to do is give you some ideas of what sales free methodologies you can use to do business development and never feel bad about it. Never feel like you're pitching or selling or convincing, which I know are like real negative words for everybody, really, that wants to grow business and feel good about it, that everyone's can win in this scenario, versus it feeling like I've got to jam a square peg in a round hole. And that's not the way I don't think any lawyers really want to feel, or really anybody, but lawyers in particular.
For
Okay.
sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Steve. It was great to be here. I'm glad we were able to reconnect through music, and
Yeah.
enjoy the rest of the summer, man.
School of Rock, everybody. Yes. And of course, thank our sponsors, Lawmatics and Get Staffed Up. And of course, if you're in the personal injury space and you love marketing, you got to check out PIMCon. That's happening in September. It's going to be first class all the way. And I think there's a discount if you go to pimcon.com and go to and type in "Be That Lawyer" in the, as the discount code. So that's all good. Mark, thanks so much, man. And thank you everybody for spending time with Mark and I-10, the Be That Lawyer with Fretzin podcast, helping you to be that lawyer, someone who's confident, organized, and a skilled rainmaker. Take care, everybody. Be safe, be well. We'll talk again soon.